Greetings at Cheating Story Lab. My accountant's email arrived without a subject line, only 5 words. Review business account promptly. This message came during a client meeting, where attention is typically focused on securing a 6-figure contract, thus phone usage is discouraged. However, the capitalized text gave me an unsettling feeling. I had to excuse myself, step out into the corridor, and access my banking app. There I discovered a staggering $47,000 missing, not due to error or glitch, but 3 separate transactions over the last fortnight, all authenticated by the secondary account holder, my wife, Veronica, whom I added to the business account 4 years ago, granting her financial independence within our marriage. Back then, it seemed like a reasonable decision. We had been married for 11 years and shared a daughter. Trust was my assumption. The elevator journey back to that conference room felt eerily reminiscent of falling. Smiled during the remainder of the presentation, exchanged handshakes, pledged to resend the amended proposal by Friday. Subsequently, drove to my workplace and extracted all financial documents from the preceding 6 months. By midnight, I uncovered another $133,000 missing, small transactions, inconsistent intervals, insufficiently large to set off alerts but regular enough to establish a pattern. Individuals aware of our cash flow had been draining the business for half a year. I contacted my brother Leo at 1 a.m. He picked up on the second ring, as he usually does when I call late. "I require a forensic accountant," I said, "and I request you not to inquire yet. How severe? Severe enough that I'm calling you at 1 in the morning." He furnished me with a name, Patricia Holbrook, a former IRS investigator turned private consultant. She consented to meet me the next day. Patricia was in her 50s, with silver hair and the tranquil composure that results from spending decades unearthing concealed funds. 4 minutes into listening to your predicament, she interrupted, asking whether you wanted to know the destination of the money or the identity of her ally. This hadn't crossed my mind before, but now both options seem crucial. If I'm to uncover the truth, I need access to all pertinent information: business accounts, personal accounts, credit cards, and phone records if they can be obtained legally. The legality aspect is something we should discuss. Since she shares your business account, there's a possibility of embezzlement beyond simple infidelity. If we require subpoenaed records, we can do so, but it would be quicker if you have access to them. However, I discovered that I may not have exclusive passwords as I thought. Veronica and I shared passwords for everything. That night, while she was at her book club, I accessed her personal email. The first message I found was from someone named Brendan Cole, sent 3 hours prior with the content, "Can't wait for tonight, tell him you're visiting your mother again." Upon further investigation, there were numerous messages dating back several months. 8 months post his termination due to performance issues, the ex-COO I had dismissed was discovered to have been secretly involved with my wife prior to his termination, and subsequently using my business account as a disguised severance package. The anger was not of the fiery, impulsive kind, but rather the chilling, meticulous sort that often drives white-collar crimes, yet I remained inactive until Patricia contacted me 2 days later. She revealed that my wife had transferred funds to 3 separate accounts, 2 belonging to Brendan Cole and a joint account opened 6 months prior in their names. The pattern of transfers indicated they had been meticulously preparing for their divorce, using the transactions to amass an undetectable yet substantial sum. Their affair was not merely clandestine, but a means to finance their future together with my business assets. I spent 3 hours in my office, fixated on spreadsheets following this revelation. Veronica prepared dinner downstairs, while Mia worked on her homework at the kitchen table. The scene appeared ordinary, but it had been off for months, perhaps longer. That evening, I informed Veronica that I would be visiting Leo for the weekend to discuss business matters. She barely acknowledged my words, keeping her gaze fixed on her phone. Instead, I headed to Thomas Brennan's office, renowned as the best divorce attorney in the state. His retainer amounted to $25,000, which I paid promptly. According to his analysis of Patricia's report, Veronica plans to file first. Women who strategize diligently do not wait for their partners to notice. She will initiate proceedings within a fortnight at most and request temporary support, half the business, and primary custody. Can she succeed? The outcome depends on our actions over the next 10 days. Thomas outlined our strategy. However, infidelity holds minimal significance in no-fault divorce states. Rather, our focus is on safeguarding the business and recording instances of theft. Company serves as our negotiating tool. She intends to claim half its worth during divorce proceedings. However, if we can expose her embezzlement, the value she receives alters. She won't get a share of what she's been stealing. What steps should I take? First, cut off her access to the business account promptly. Second, file a police report for embezzlement. Third, allow her to initiate the divorce. Do not act first. It's best to wait until we have criminal charges against her for her request. I terminated her account access that evening. The following morning, she attempted to transfer $12,000 but couldn't. I was in the garage when she burst in. What happened to the business account? I glanced up from my workbench where I pretended to organize tools. What exactly do you mean? My access is restricted. Resolve it. I've updated the security measures. Why do you require access to the business account? Her expression showed a reaction I hadn't seen before, a fleeting panic followed by anger. I'm your spouse. The personal account is mine to access. That's distinct from the business account. There seems to be an issue. I'll speak with the bank on Monday. However, I didn't contact the bank on Monday morning. Instead, I filed a police report for embezzlement. Detective Andrea Morrison listened to my statement and scrutinized Patricia's records. It appears to be a straightforward case of embezzlement, she said. She has legal access to the account but transferred funds to a third party without sufficient business reason, which is theft. We need to question her. How long will this take? The time frame could range from tomorrow to next week, depending on her availability. It took 3 days. Upon returning home Tuesday evening, Veronica presented me with a lawyer's business card and a chilling expression. Did you contact the police about me? I reported a theft from my own business. Was that inappropriate? You are well aware of your actions. I'm initiating divorce proceedings. This caught her off guard. She had anticipated a disagreement, perhaps tears, certainly some dramatic scene. Instead, I simply nodded. You want half my business, she said. Mia will accompany me, allowing the court to decide matters. She filed for divorce shortly after dawn. Thomas had informed me of each document they'd submit. These included a temporary support demand of $8,000 monthly, an asset division request claiming 50% of our business value, the house, and my retirement accounts, custody arrangements granting primary physical custody to her with supervised visits for me. This was what truly shook me. She was constructing a story to portray me as potentially harmful or unstable. 2 days later, Thomas filed our response. It contained Patricia's forensic accounting report, bank statements proving unauthorized transfers, and screenshots of messages between Veronica and Brendan discussing their future financed by his funds. However, we took an additional step that caught Veronica and her lawyer off guard. We legally dissolved the business, but in reality, I had spent 3 weeks consulting with corporate attorney Margaret Chen. She focuses on business restructuring and asset protection. During our initial discussion, she inquired about the nature of your business. You disclosed that it's an S corporation, of which you are the sole proprietor. Here's a suggested approach. We would dissolve the corporation and transform your business structure into a personal services contract, making you an independent contractor rather than a business owner. The corporate entity would no longer hold any liquidation value as an asset. Is this lawful? Absolutely it is. This practice is common in divorce cases. The primary concern isn't legality, but whether we can execute the process swiftly and document it accurately. We managed to accomplish this in just 3 weeks. Specifically, I dissolved Apex Consulting Group LLC. All client contracts were renegotiated with you as the service provider directly. The tangible assets such as computers, furniture, software licenses were sold to a holding company established by my brother for this specific purpose, at fair market value and with documented appraisals, ensuring a legitimate sale. What remained was yourself. Adrian Cassidy, an independent consultant, had a 5-year service contract with a management firm that paid him $340,000 yearly. There was no business to divide or assets to liquidate. He was simply a man with a job. For weeks after Veronica filed, we found ourselves in a courtroom presided over by Judge Catherine Wells. Rachel Friedman, Veronica's attorney, put forth her argument first. Your Honor, Mrs. Cassidy is asking for temporary support of $8,000 monthly. Mr. Cassidy owns a prosperous consulting business worth approximately $2.3 million. The family has grown accustomed to a specific lifestyle, and Mrs. Cassidy requires financial assistance to maintain it during these proceedings. Judge Wells turned her gaze towards me. Mr. Cassidy? Thomas rose. Your Honor, Mr. Cassidy no longer owns a business. Apex Consulting Group was disbanded 3 weeks ago as part of a legitimate corporate reorganization. He is now an independent contractor earning $340,000 annually. Beyond doubt, there's proof that Mrs. Cassidy misappropriated $180,000 from the business before its closure, and legal proceedings regarding this matter are ongoing. The courtroom fell silent. Rapidly, Rachel Friedman regained composure. "Your Honor," she began, "this is blatantly an effort to conceal assets. It's unacceptable for Mr. Cassidy to liquidate a multi-million-dollar business to dodge equitable distribution," she argued. Thomas then presented the judge with a thick file. Inside were records of the dissolution, appraisals of all assets, valid sale deals with external parties, and an independent contractor agreement. Everything was transparently documented and filed. Regarding the embezzlement, we possess forensic accounting reports and police incident reports. Judge Wells studied the documents diligently for 10 minutes before breaking her silence. The quiet was palpable. Finally, she looked up. "Mrs. Friedman," she inquired, "does your client deny the embezzlement charge?" "Your Honor," Mrs. Friedman responded, "Mrs. Cassidy had authorization to access the account. Any transactions she executed were permissible as a holder of the account, yet her face paled when it came to transfers to personal or her boyfriend's accounts. She murmured something to her lawyer. To the court, Rachel attempted again. Mrs. Cassidy was unaware that moving marital funds necessitated specific records. Instead, she moved business funds. The judge interjected. Funds that belonged to her husband's company, not to the marital assets. That amounts to theft, counsel, regardless of account access. The temporary support hearing concluded with Judge Wells rejecting Veronica's $8,000 demand and instead granting her $2,500 monthly, barely sufficient for a decent apartment rental. The judge also mandated the return of any misappropriated funds within 30 days or risk facing criminal charges. Veronica and Rachel departed without addressing us. Later in the parking garage, Thomas waited until we were out of sight. The outcome was better than anticipated, but the true battle is yet to come. She plans to assert that you illegally dissolved the business to deceive her. With no remaining assets, can she succeed in this argument? Not if our records are airtight, which they are. Margaret performed exceptionally, but be prepared for things to turn sour. They became sour. Over the following 3 months, Veronica's legal team presented one motion after another aiming to show I concealed assets or committed fraud. They requested an account of every penny spent during the marriage. They issued a subpoena for my brother's business records, attempting to prove the holding company was fake. They hired their own forensic accountant to contest Patricia's findings. They found nothing because there was nothing to discover. Every transaction was above board. Each business decision was recorded. The dissolution was lawful and correctly executed. Concurrently, Detective Morrison's investigation came to a close. The prosecutor's office offered Veronica a deal. Return the $180,000, plead guilty to 1 count of felony theft except probation, and avoid prison time. She declined, asserting her innocence as she perceived no wrongdoing had been committed. The trial date was established 6 months later, with the criminal proceedings preceding the divorce. During those months, I undertook reconstruction. Working as an independent contractor turned out to be more advantageous than managing the business. It involved fewer costs, less staff, and eliminated the pressure of meeting payroll deadlines. Essentially, it was about me, my skills, and clients who were ready to pay high rates for consultations. Mia stayed with me for 3 nights a week. Veronica attempted to depict me as unstable, but the custody evaluator discerned her tactics. Mia, being 13, had formed opinions. She expressed her preference for equal time with both parents to the evaluator. The court complied with her wish. The criminal trial spanned 2 days. Brendan Cole testified, attempting to argue that Veronica claimed the money was hers to utilize. The prosecutor undermined him during cross-examination, presenting messages that revealed they'd planned to conceal transactions from me. On the second day, Veronica took the stand. She argued she was entitled to use company funds as we were married and shared everything. However, the prosecutor presented messages with Brendan discussing a joint account and her admitting, "He'll hardly notice if we keep it under $10K per transfer." The jury pondered for 3 hours before convicting her on all charges. Judge Morrison, unrelated to the detective, imposed a sentence of 2 years probation, repayment of $180,000 plus interest, and 200 hours of community service. No prison time due to it being a first offense, but with a felony conviction that would be permanent. The subsequent divorce trial was less dramatic after this verdict. Veronica's lawyer attempted to claim I should cover her legal costs as my actions led to the criminal case. Judge Wells rejected this request. They also attempted to claim the business closure was fraudulent. In court, Margaret Chen provided thorough insight as an expert witness, clarifying that each phase of restructuring was standard in corporate legislation. However, Judge Wells rejected the motion. Later, Rachel Friedman attempted a final argument. Your Honor, despite business restructuring, Mrs. Cassidy is entitled to half of the joint matrimonial assets, which include the house, retirement funds, and savings. A fair distribution should be enforced. Thomas rose, arguing, Your Honor, we don't contest an equitable division of valid marital assets. But Mrs. Cassidy's embezzlement of $180,000 amounts to the dissipation of marital assets. This amount must be subtracted from her share of the estate. Judge Wells concurred. Ultimately, Veronica received the house, burdened with its $280,000 mortgage and half of one retirement account. I retained the remaining portion, deducting the $90,000 owed to her following the accounting of her theft. $180,000 in restitution was owed to me as reparation, and it would be deducted from her earnings for the following decade. On a crisp November Tuesday afternoon, I exited that courthouse. The sky presented that distinctive blue you only see during fall. Though I lost my marriage, I retained all else. My enterprise was no more, yet my profession flourished. My bond with Mia had strengthened, surpassing its previous best. The sham of security had been dismantled, compelling us to be truthful with each other. Leo invited me for dinner that evening at a nearby steakhouse, a smaller dwelling but mine without the presence of ghosts. He inquired about my feelings. After pondering, I replied, I feel like I've endured something. It wasn't only one survived. That might be accurate. Had you ever imagined Veronica would act in such a manner? Frankly, no. But I also underestimated her ability to create a damning paper trail. I chuckled at the thought. The paper trail proved crucial. Your suspicion saved you. Most people don't maintain a forensic accountant on speed dial. You provided me with Patricia's phone number, a request made at 1 a.m., which could have led to a confrontation or domestic turmoil by ordinary people. Instead, you carefully constructed a legal argument. Is that wrong? No, it's the reason why you're here enjoying a ribeye instead of losing your business in a court divorce. It's been 3 years since that November day. Mia is now 16 and spends most of her time with me. Veronica's apartment is too small, and her unpredictable probation schedule prevents her from being around more often. I reconstructed my consulting practice under a new framework. The annual revenue exceeds what it was prior to the divorce. It seems that not having a spouse embezzling funds boosts profitability. Veronica now works in a dental office handling insurance billing. She managed to pay off around $40,000 of restitution before declaring bankruptcy. Her felony conviction rules out careers in finance or obtaining professional licenses. Her relationship with Brendan lasted only 4 months following the trial. Discovering that shared theft was an unstable basis for romance is a peculiar revelation. What's oddest is that I no longer harbor hatred towards her. For over a year, perhaps 2, I nurtured intense hatred that kept me awake at night. However, the hatred gradually waned, replaced by something akin to pity. She sacrificed 14 years of marriage, stability, and a promising future for $180,000 and an affair with a man who betrayed her under oath to save himself. She forfeited her daughter's respect, employment opportunities, and any prospect of financial security. I lost a spouse who was not the person I had believed her to be. In her place, I gained insights. I learned to safeguard what I have constructed. I learned that trust requires validation, and I learned that sometimes the most effective retribution isn't dramatic or violent, it's simply keeping records. Last week, Mia inquired if I would remarry. Perhaps, I replied, but this time I'll have a prenuptial agreement and they won't have access to my business accounts. She chuckled. That sounds wise. It's probably a good idea. Perhaps you believe me to be overly pessimistic, but possibly I am merely informed by events instead. Events such as $180,000 in theft, a half year of legal battles, and the sobering revelation that the person sharing your bed might be a stranger. Veronica demanded half my business during our divorce. She received half of what was left following her pilferage, after the restructuring, after the legal costs, restitution, and the fallout from her decisions. She received exactly what she earned, half of nothing while I retained everything meaningful. The end.